sometimes that's when the muse hits and you have that amazing idea that's like, if we just did this, we'd solve the problem. So always have a way to
There's
write that down
silver
when it
bullet
happens.
again.
Well, the muse
Yeah.
is not a silver bullet. When that hits, it hits. And it's great.
Yeah.
But you can't rely on it.
Yeah.
Because
I
it
do think
doesn't come when you want it to.
it is funny. I tend to take a Sharpie everywhere.
Mhm.
I don't very often take a handbag out. That generally I keep things in my pockets, but I will always have a Sharpie about my person in case I get struck by something. And I'm like, quick, write it down. Like, the canvas is my skin. It doesn't matter. Like, so I'll sacrifice the back of my hand for this idea.
Hi, I'm Karl.
And I'm Danielle.
And this is Productly Speaking.
We're product managers by trade, and here we explore the world of product management, its people, and their stories.
We promise to keep it entertaining, and maybe you'll learn something. Shall we give this a go?
Let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we should be professionals at this point.
Kick us off.
So in this episode, we take a look back at our first season, a recap, if you will. But before we get going with that, Karl, why is this episode called "And Then I Went Ice Skating"?
Because I went ice skating? Yeah, I did go ice skating. As everybody who knows anything about recording a podcast season, especially the way we've done it here, there's been a lot that's been going on that doesn't necessarily make it into the podcast. And on January 6th, I had the opportunity to go ice skating. Now, my wife and son had been ice skating before, and they'd gone without me, and I was maybe a little bit jealous of that fact, and I'd wanted to try it. And so we got the opportunity on that Saturday to go, and I got there and I put on a set of skates, and the left skate wasn't working at all. I wasn't able to stand up on it. The skate was just wrong. So I took the skate back and got another skate. And this one was a little bit better, got it as tight as I could. And I started going around the ice skating rink, holding on to the side. There were a lot of people there though, so it was a lot of traffic. Held on to the side, went around maybe 8 or 9 times, was starting to get a little bit more confident because there were a lot of people there. I started trying to pass people, grab the wall again after you finish the pass, but just kind of starting to learn to glide. And then on one pass, I didn't make it. I landed right on my butt, and I looked down at my leg, and it was pointed the wrong way, and I said, I broke my leg. And they came out and put cones around me so that people wouldn't skate into me. I kind of wish I had a picture of that. And
I'm glad you didn't.
I laid there for about 25 minutes waiting for the emergency services to get there and get me all split it up and taken out into the hospital. And I eventually made it to the hospital, and I had surgery on Sunday because I broke my leg in 3 spiral fractures, and I went home on Monday. I only expected to be gone for about 2.5 hours, and I was gone for a weekend, which was not exactly what I expected.
Yeah, not the holiday weekend you were expecting.
No, it wasn't.
It's been a long road to recovery, getting you up, back, and walking.
Yeah.
How has the experience of your temporary disablement changed your approach to product management?
Yeah.
It's a product management podcast, after all.
It's a product management podcast. So how do we connect these things? Well, yeah, I mean, when you have that type of temporary disablement, it definitely causes you to slow down. I mean, I literally could not do anything for myself at first. And, luckily I have a great wife who was able to help me out and do these things for me and help me do these things. But I mean, even things like getting in and out of the bed, this thing was just a big weight that wouldn't move. And at first it was like, okay, now help pick my leg up and put it in the bed. The physical therapy people came by and kind of gave me some tips on how to do this myself. So over time, I started being able to do things a little bit more by myself. And as the weeks went on, I was able to do more and more. And finally, I'm back up and walking again, which is amazing because there were 7 weeks where I could not walk without a walker. And it's been kind of wild. This will sound kind of cliche, but I never really thought about how important accessibility was before all of this. Everybody says accessibility is important, and I would never have denied that accessibility in your product is important and that you need to take these use cases into consideration, whatever they are for the type of product you're designing. It's an important thing. Never would have said it's not. But once you live the need for accessibility technology or accessibility workarounds, like just learning to use my good leg to pick my bad leg up and get it into the bed, things like this. Just once you actually have to use that, you get a different perspective on it. And it really shows you that until you've had that lived experience, it's really kind of difficult to understand that. We've spent a lot of time in this season talking about what are the things that are needed to make product management really work. And we've talked a lot with John Cutler about this, but lived experience, a desire to tinker, that innate curiosity that is always trying to figure out how things work, those are really key things for product managers. And I think that if you're looking at product management as a discipline, and there's been a lot of discussion recently about what makes a good product manager or a great product manager, or maybe there's product managers out there that don't really do product management, and so they're rife for being removed from the industry as their jobs get eliminated. If you have these things, this enables you to be a great product manager. These are the things that the AI cannot replace. Yeah, an AI could probably write a feature or an Epic or, some of these templates. This stuff has gotten pretty good. But if you have that lived experience, you have that desire to tinker, that innate curiosity, those are things that are pretty human qualities that are just going to be hard to replace. And that's the part of product management that you really can't teach in school, but that gives you that ability to go into a difficult situation and make a good decision.
Yeah, I think we've accidentally found a theme of this season to be empathy, and I'm so glad that we did. But it's, if you can't have lived experience, how do you get empathy for the people that do have that lived experience so you can bring that into your solutions and to your products? And that's where empathy is key, like understanding what other people's contexts are, what the problem is that they're experiencing, why they're experiencing it, how they're experiencing it, the solutions they have today, like just really, truly understanding the problem that you're trying to solve. And that doesn't apply to just end users, but also customers as a whole and even team members. And I think that's the reach of product management is its internal team members, it's your own management team, it's your leadership team, it's your end users, the customers you work with. It kind of touches everybody in slightly different ways. And as a product manager, you can really own what that looks like and own that narrative in order to then own that and build that perfect product.
Yeah, I thought a lot about that ahead of our recording this episode today, and it really kind of hit home that best case scenario, you have the problem yourself, that you're the product manager for, that you are one of the people that has the problem that you're trying to solve, because you're going to know that problem very well at that point, and you're going to know what would solve it for you. That gives you a little bit of a bias because it might not solve it for somebody else that has the same problem, but at least you're pretty close to the problem at that point. Outside of having that type of experience, because not all of us are lucky enough to work on products for problems that we actually personally have, you've got to actually care about the problem. Like, it's got to be a problem that you find personally interesting. And if you're a product manager on a product that solves a problem that you don't care about, then you need to find a different product to go be a product manager of if you really want to be happy in the role. When you actually can care about the problem that you're solving, that's when you can make an impact.
Totally. What I think is really interesting is that a lot of people who jump into empathy and who spend a lot of time in emotions often struggle and suffer from burnout. It's something that you and I both experienced. It's something we've talked about. It's something that, you lean on your team members to try and help share that burden, especially as like within a PM team, you share that burden of emotion. But what are the other things when it comes to burnout that like could help stop people from suffering from burnout, but still continue to be empathetic with customers and users and team members?
Yeah, so there was I keep quoting the Harvard Business Review, but here we go. There was a Harvard Business Review article on the difference between emotionally empathetic and being having empathic concern. And the key difference here is that emotionally empathetic is where you're basically experiencing the same distress as the person who's unloading on you. You're trying to help somebody out and they're getting you just as riled up as they are. And that is a recipe for taking a lot of energy out of you, because when you get emotionally riled up, it takes your physical energy, it takes mental energy. There's actual physical reactions that happen in your body that do cause you to be tired, that require calories for these things to happen. And so you start burning through what you've got, and it is actually something you can feel. And the empathic concern, which is a harder thing to pull off, is not taking on the emotion of the person that you're talking to, but being there to listen and being there to care and being there to show that concern of wanting to help, but just trying to keep yourself completely separate from what they feel and trying to come at it more pragmatically. It's hard because when you're helping somebody who's in an emotional state, we have a tendency to get carried away and to want to take that emotion on. But if you can not take on that emotion any more than you have to, then this is the way to keep from getting burned out in this emotional role. Because, Danielle, you've mentioned plenty of times before that product management is an emotional role. I mean, you end up dealing with so many different people in so many different places and so many different situations, and it's filled with emotion.
Yeah, you kind of have to figure out a way to harness it for fuel so that you store it as energy for later and you apply it in a really purposeful way that helps with the problem instead of echoing the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I also think we need to take time for ourselves. It's one thing you can find yourself doing in product management is you can find it just completely taking over. You can find yourself thinking about this stuff all the time. You can find yourself never really turning off. And I think that you need to actually take the time to turn off. And I know, Danielle, that you are exceptionally good about turning off on the weekends. And I actually kind of envy how well you are able to do at that. But, actually being able to unplug on a regular basis is probably quite helpful.
I think I didn't used to be, right? Like it takes a lot of work to be able to like put the phone down and respect work-life balance boundaries. There was a period of time where I was so intensely thinking about work that I was going through 3 times as much shampoo because I couldn't remember if I'd washed my hair already. Like I was stood in the shower and just so thinking about what I was working on and getting stressed about it that I was just not focusing on life tasks, like basic life tasks. And so I kind of had to push through that. And it still takes a lot of effort. And I don't think I've got the balance right. Like, ignoring your friends on the weekend or for weeks on an end because you don't have the space or because they're slightly related to work isn't the right balance. But it's practice and hard work and you eventually kind of get there. I think a point you've already made as well is like finding the joy. Like it should be fun. Like work on a problem that intrigues you, that you can be curious about, that you can be excited about, because like if it's fun, then it's not as tiring.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're in kind of a spot in the industry right now where there's been a lot of layoffs in tech. And so for product managers in tech, there's just a lot of fear of what's to come and fear of difficulty moving around and whatnot. And it does kind of create a culture where fun is like the last thing people are thinking about. But it's like, folks, this is supposed to be a lot of fun. You're supposed to be excited to actually do this. And if you can't do that, well, then try to figure out how to do it. And that's easier said than done. We've also talked about how we don't have the silver bullets for anything. And this is one of those things where there's not a silver bullet for it. But if you can find something to get excited about, something to get interested in, then that can help you. And sometimes that's as easy as just going and talking to other people on your team that maybe you haven't talked to as much before. Sometimes there's a bad situation, but you go talk to somebody and then they've got an idea that gets you excited and you've got an idea that then gets them excited. And the next thing you know, you've got 2 people that were not excited before that are now excited about doing something and move forward.
Yeah, there's not a silver bullet to it because it's so personal, right? Like where each person finds fun is going to be slightly different. I know you experience a lot of joy when you can tinker and find a cool solution to a cool problem. And my fun, in quotes, is slightly different. Like I really enjoy getting other people excited about stuff. And so I kind of don't care how interesting the problem is to me personally, because if somebody else is interested and I can get somebody else excited, then I breathe off of that joy. And so even just between the 2 of us, we work so well together, but we still find joy in different places. I think that's why there's no silver bullet, but also in there not being a silver bullet, there's a lot of room for creativity, which can be quite cool as well.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We spend so much of our time being empathetic and having empathy to other people. Something else we've talked about in the background while we've been doing these recordings and these episodes is having empathy for yourself and making sure that you're not gaslighting yourself. And that's something that we were really keen to talk to John Cutler about in that episode because of his article on self-gaslighting. And I think it's so common now to kind of get in your own way and to get in your own head. And there's all of these different phrases around it. And there's all of these potential solutions, mindfulness and being really purposeful about where you spend your energy that we kind of haven't brought to the forefront in any of our episodes specifically, but is something that you and I have been talking around in the background because each episode these themes are coming up, and it's so easy for us to forget to be empathetic to ourselves.
Cutler brings up, and to quote that Cutler article, because it is really good, and if you haven't read that, I would encourage you to read the whole thing. But it's easy to beat yourself up. If only we could be stronger, have better control of our emotions, understand people better, lead better, make fewer excuses, show up better, manage up better, have a better presence. We could be better, 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 better. And it's easy to get into a world where you feel that, where you feel like everything you're doing isn't good enough, and that if only you could be just a little bit better here, if only you could be just a little bit better there, and to not really see the impact of your actions. I mean, that's just really, I think that's the natural state of a product manager, because to some degree, you're supposed to make things better. You're supposed to be, taking a current state and making it better. So
there's always an iteration.
Yeah, this is a good problem to have, because you want to be driving forward. But you can't let it get to the point where you start to feel that your own value that you bring to the table isn't there. And that kind of goes back to the point of not taking on the emotion too much. So like, you got a product, you're moving it forward. Some things aren't working as well as they should be, because there's always going to be that scenario in any product. You can't take that personally. You have to separate yourself from that. And you have to be able to draw that line to where you're working on it, you're making it better, but that it's not better yet isn't necessarily a reflection on just you. And I think that that's where we tend to want to go with that if only we could be better, this would be better.
There's a lot to taking stuff personally too. Something that I feel, and I know a lot of people do it, is when you get customer feedback or end user feedback, and trying not to take that personally is so hard. Like, you think you've done all of the groundwork with finding the problem, you've been empathetic in understanding the problem space, and then you come together with the solution. You could have even done it all by the book perfectly well, going back and forth with iterations and customer research and all of this, and then you push it, and then you get one piece of feedback that just breaks all of your confidence, or just says that you were off the mark somehow, somewhere, whether it's one piece of feedback or whether it's the whole market rejecting the idea. It can be so tough. I loved chatting to Jennifer about that, and like all the way back at the beginning of the season, just understanding like how you find the signal in the noise, because and how you listen to which piece of feedback, and how you identify which pieces are true, which pieces are important, which pieces you do iterate on, and which pieces you can safely ignore, I think is a fascinating. I loved that conversation.
Well, and that ties back to what Amy and Trevor were talking about with, pick the right customers, because if you've 100%. Got the wrong customers for what you're trying to do, they're going to give you feedback that what you're trying to do isn't what they want. And so you're going to find yourself getting you thought you did what you were supposed to. This is what the company wants to do. You were in line with that, but the customer's not in line with it. And so the feedback is, hey, this didn't work, or this isn't all that good. And it would be hard not to take that personally. Like and that just pointed out.
Yeah, and that links to like Bob's episode of understanding product market fit. Mm-hmm. Once you've chosen that right customer, like what is it that they're trying to achieve? What are you trying to achieve as a company? And then narrowing on that and having focus in that.
Yeah, well,
which is also where we touched with Adam, right?
Yeah. Speaking about the Bob episode, I mean, my mind is still blown about like that whole operational piece. Like they had the product that was 10 times faster, but because it didn't fit the operational workflow that everybody had ingrained in their brains for so many years, we aren't going to adopt that. We'd have to retrain all these people. Are you crazy? It may be 10 times faster, but it's too much of a cost to bring it in.
Right.
Yeah, that was,
that brings us full circle back to empathy again, and that like understanding the environment, because while the product was 10 times better, data says it's 10 times better, the environment is such that, yeah, but we've got 100 people trained on how to do this. We don't want better. We don't want faster. We can do this already. Like, it just is fascinating. It all seems to come back to the customer. Unsurprisingly, right?
Yes, unsurprising. I mean, that it is kind of the whole point. We're here to solve problems for people that have those problems, and the people that have those problems become your customers when you actually have a solution to the problem. So
yeah,
it's no surprise. But going back to kind of the Cutler self-gaslighting bit, one thing that he says that I really do like is that there are times that we experience joy and pride at work, and to quote him, the moments when we feel fulfilled and our needs are met, we are experiencing something real. We aren't second guessing ourselves or spinning ourselves in circles with maybes and buts. So you just have to kind of remember that there are these moments, and these are the moments to ground yourself in, and to realize that that's real. That's a big point that he's making there, because the self-gaslighting thing is real, but also those moments of joy are true as well. And if you have that moment of joy, it's because you've worked to get it. That comes out of having done that work. And even the top performers, you look around you at work and whatnot, and you're like, oh, well, these people are doing so much better than me. No, everybody pretty much has the same challenges and doubts, and everybody has a lot of these same feelings. Imposter syndrome is real, and all of us feel imposter syndrome. Even if we go out there, guns blazing, sticks raised high, ready to go, imposter syndrome is real.
Yeah. One of the words that's really stuck out for me on chatting to different folks this season is authenticity. And I think that ties really closely thereof. Even top performers have these challenges, have these doubts, have this self-gaslighting. And if we're authentic and true with each other, we don't have to be, opening our hearts or letting, crossing the work-life boundary and letting people into our deepest, darkest secrets and sharing. Like, we don't have to do that much.
That's not what we're recommending here.
No, totally. But I think it's totally fair to lean on your teammates and say hey, I'm feeling a little less confident in this decision because of, I don't have this data point. Give me your feedback. Can we do this together? Can we learn together? Where can we plug the holes? Where can we better understand the gaps? And just being authentic is it's another word that's really stuck out to me this season.
Yeah. I mean, it does make a team stronger when people are willing to lean in a little bit. And like you said, not necessarily about your deepest, darkest personal secrets. No, not that at all. But if you come in and ask about how would I solve this work challenge, or this is, not something I've come into before. Have you seen this before? Because you never know. I mean, people on your team may very well have seen this 500 times and know all the ins and outs of how to do this. And on top of that, be very willing to share that with you. And there's probably things that you've seen that they haven't. So you could help them out at some point too. It may not be right now, but maybe somewhere down the road, you've got something to contribute back to it. And I think that having that collaborative function within a team is super critical, but you have to be careful with how you do it because you don't want to be appearing to open everybody's pickle jar going back to season 0. You don't want to be the person that looks like all you want to do is say, here, give me the pickle jar. I can do it. I'm better than you. So be careful with how you phrase these things and come from a place of, truly wanting help and a little bit of humility. It goes a long ways.
Yeah, and I think that's where we kind of chatted with Johannes and Callum this season is the value of teamwork and the value of bringing people from different segments of the organization together in order to do this together. It is not one person's responsibility to open the pickle jar. We are all having to kind of get a hand on it, get a finger on it, get an understanding of why the jar isn't opening itself. And then we're not frustrating each other because we're all working in the same direction. We're all pulling in the same direction, which means that, there's less territorialness about it. There's less stepping on each other's toes because we all understand what the goal is and we trust each other. We've built that teamwork. We've built that rapport. We've built those relationships with authenticity as its underpinning. And those partnerships are just critical, especially in this remote world where we're not meeting each other physically. We're not having those water cooler moments. So you have to put so much more effort in to creating those connections with people. And you don't always have to be the one with all of the answers. So you have to be able to know who you can trust and build those trusting connections to build the answers together.
Well, to your point, I mean, that's so much more difficult in the remote working world as opposed to seeing people on a day-to-day basis in an office. But it can be done. I think that the last company we were at was proof that it could be done because it was a completely remote company. And if you couldn't do it, then you probably weren't going to last there because you had to be able to build those relationships remotely. And the way you do it is by talking to people. And yes, that means more meetings on your calendar. It means taking more one-on-ones, but it's time you would have spent in the hall talking to these people anyway if you were actually at the office. So by actually booking it on your calendar and taking the time, I think you can make the connection reasonably close to what you can make the connection in person.
Totally. And that's where Teresa's idea of the 2-hour design sprint, I think, is really valuable because the 5-day design sprint is definitely not a waste of time. It's valuable and you get so much from it when you do them. But the 2-hour design sprint says, I care about your time, but I also care about our ability to work together. So let's go ahead and dedicate 2 whole hours, which when you're remote feels like a lot of time.
Yeah.
It really focuses you on what's important and then making sure that you're all aligned.
Mm-hmm.
we're starting to touch on focus there, which I think was an interesting undercurrent as well. And I don't know if any of our guests kind of called it out explicitly, but it definitely comes through when you start to piece them together of focus and clarity and being really distinct on your customer, the persona that you're building for, having a harmony of products that work together, of features that work together, and just really understanding the one person or the group of people that you're solving for. I started to see that focus theme. Did you see that too?
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely that theme of focus in product management. One of the worst things you can do is to lose focus. You want to be focused on getting something out and getting it right, going back to the whole perfect, and be better, be better, be better. But you want to get something out there and right, because to get something out there and wrong, which you will inevitably do, means that you have to iterate on it and iterate and get it back to right. But as soon as you start having something right, now you've got a foundation you can build on and you can keep shipping more. But if you've got like 5 things you're trying to do right all at the same time, you got a much higher degree of shipping 5 things that don't work at all, versus if you've got 1 or 2 things that you're trying to get right, you've got a good chance at getting that right. And if you don't get it right, it's a lot quicker to fix 1 or 2 things that aren't right than it is to try and fix 5 things all at once. So I think you're right to point out that focus is just a key thought that keeps recurring, because it's like, focus on one area, get that right, however much work that takes, then move to the next area and focus on that and get that right. And just having a high degree of prioritization and constantly revisiting your prioritization, because that could change from week to week or month to month as you continue to move through. The market changes, the product changes, the prospects change. There's a whole lot of things that could change. So just keep revisiting that to make sure that what you're working on right now is the thing that needs the most attention to be right and have the focus.
Yeah, and I think just even on a really practical and like low-level tactical sense, we often call this context shifting at work, where you're asking people to have a lot in their brains, and the effort it takes to move from one subject to the next subject, stuff is going to get dropped, and it's really hard to do. So the more subjects you're asking people to keep in their head at a team level, the more likely it is that something's going to go wrong, or you're going to forget something, or it's just not going to land the way you wanted it to. The narrative isn't going to make sense. It's not going to play well to different team members. It's a lot to put on people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say it again, but empathy for teammates, right? Like if you're all thinking about one thing and then moving on to the next thing, it's great, because if you're thinking about 7 things at once, that's when stuff starts to get really messy and difficult to control.
And oftentimes we don't have the choice not to think about 7 things at once.
Yeah, but this is where the work-life balance comes in. If you think, and I can't remember where I heard this, I'd probably have to dig it out of some sort of article. The regular human can remember 7 things at once. And so if you think, oh, I've got to remember to take the dog out for a walk, and I've got to remember to take my laundry out, and I've got to remember to like fill the dishwasher, and I also have to remember to email Karl back, and I have to remember to call my mom, and I have to remember to, and suddenly you're up to 5 things, and we haven't even started thinking about work yet.
Yeah.
That's even more prevalent in a remote environment, because we're not leaving our houses. So all of those house things are taking up those 7 spots. If you're in an office, then maybe they're different, but also it's not really practical to leave your home life at the door when you walk into the office anymore. That's not how it kind of rolls. Even if you've minimized the amount of home things you've got in your list of 7, there's still going to be some there. You still haven't actually got 7 things to remember. You've maybe got 2 or 3.
Yeah, dude, you're absolutely right. I mean, I've never had a time where I've gone into the office and it's just been office thoughts only the entire time I'm there. There's always some thought back to what am I going to be doing this evening? What am I going to be doing this weekend? What's going on at home? Those things
Totally.
are always in the mind.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't be trying to get those out of your head. With the exception of like taking care of them.
Yeah.
This is where things like getting things done come into play, actually being able to like have a place where you store your thoughts, so that like I know my thought is in the system. I will come back to it at a later time and date and deal with it then. And for most things, this works quite well. Obviously, if you've got something that's really big and really taking up a lot of brain space and is hard to move off, systems like this don't fix that. But for the day-to-day, it works out really quite well. And we could certainly do a whole episode just on getting things done and how to stay organized and how to keep your tasks straight so that you can walk away from this stuff. Though it is still hard, like you're literally trying to solve a problem Yeah, you can break it out into tasks, but just that general, even when you're out there doing something totally unrelated to work, your brain is still working through those threads. And sometimes that's when the muse hits and you have that amazing idea that's like, if we just did this, we'd solve the problem. So always have a way to
There's
write that down
silver
when it
bullet
happens.
again.
Well, the muse
Yeah.
is not a silver bullet. When that hits, it hits. And it's great. But you can't rely on it.
Yeah.
Because
I
it
do
doesn't
think
come when you want it to.
It is funny. I tend to take a Sharpie everywhere.
Mhm.
I don't very often take a handbag out. That generally I keep things in my pockets, but I will always have a Sharpie about my person in case I get struck by something. And I'm like, quick, write it down. Like, the canvas is my skin. It doesn't matter. Like, so I'll sacrifice the back of my hand for this idea.
Yeah, having something to write on is key, because if you do have this great idea just happen, I mean, those ideas come at all sorts of random times and you almost never have something to write with at that point. And I have lost an idea or two for not writing it down. So always have something to write it down on.
There's that bit in Friends. I hope you enjoy Friends, the TV series. Otherwise, this reference isn't going to make sense. There's an episode about a cheesecake. Like, it's the best cheesecake in New York or something. And Joey just always has a fork in his pocket. And so is just always ready with a fork to eat the cheesecake. And it's just any food, you put it in front of Joey, he's prepared. And I think it's that for me of like, I'm always prepared. It's just a Sharpie rather
Instead
than
of
a fork. Other permanent markers are available.
Must this be a brand
Well,
commercial?
I don't know. I'm sure there are other permanent markers available. Sharpie has just become synonymous with it for now.
Sharpies work pretty well, though.
Yeah.
There's a reason. I mean, just like Band-Aid over here is synonymous with bandage. It's because the brand has become so ubiquitous. And you only get to ubiquity because you work extremely well and people know that they can rely on you. So,
and you solve the problem, right?
Yeah, you solve the problem.
Yeah.
And that's very true. The product managers for those products have very difficult jobs. What new problem to solve with this thing that already solves the product?
Yeah, they've made themselves redundant because they nailed the problem.
And speaking of companies that have products that already solve the problem, one of the things that you still have to do, even when you've hit that point, is identify the jobs to be done. And that was another key theme of our season this time.
Yeah, it seems to be really taking off as a way to think about user flows and user journeys in product, is to combine your persona and your kind of understanding of the problem and the context that your user is in with also their motivation and the thing that they're trying to do. So jobs to be done is, okay, I've got this person with these demographics about them, they're in this country, they're speaking this language, and the thing they are trying to achieve is ... And that's a really interesting way to get a product team around a problem and to think about things holistically. I just think it's really fascinating. I'm really glad it came up a few times over the season in various different lights as well. It's been really cool to see.
Yeah, it's a great topic.
So along with jobs to be done, we've talked about a couple of other tools and different kind of ways of thinking about user problems and user flows. One of the things I really loved in the Johannes and Callum episode is allowing us to focus on what is the superpower of a product manager. Why is a product manager critical to a product company? Which, product manager, product company, you kind of put the two together, but I think it's such a subtle job and the industry is still changing its description of the job. And so I loved that we were able to talk in that episode around what does a product manager bring to the table?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in that episode and in talking with all the other people that we talked to this season, we've really started to see that product management is the application of tools, frameworks, intuition, and a lot of lived experience as well to try and make a difference in the lives of people through these inanimate things that we call products. The magic of product is the people making the inanimate things seemingly come to life and having fun doing that. Because if you think about a software product, it's a bunch of bits. It's a fairly abstract thing, a software product is.
Bits and bytes.
But when it solves a problem, it becomes useful to the customer. When you can then call somebody to ask for help when it doesn't work the way it should, and you actually get somebody to talk to that knows what you're talking about and can help you, it's no longer this inanimate thing. It's this group of people using this technology to solve this problem and help each other out. And that's where it becomes kind of magic, because at that point, you've taken all these things, you brought them together, and now you're actually solving the problem. And that's fun. And that's where the fun is in seeing that come alive. Because if you remove all the people out of it, it's back to just being an inanimate set of code that sits on a computer and doesn't really do anything. So it is bringing those people in there that makes it so exciting.
Absolutely. You want to wrap us up, Karl?
Sure. Yeah, in closing, life is short, and it's a great honor to get to help people. It's really kind of the whole point of the product manager job. It shouldn't be about ego stoking or about who can get ahead the fastest. It's really about going out there, finding problems you care about, finding the people who have those problems and solving them. But in taking on such work, it's easy to let the mission get the better of us, and we can't really let that happen so that work doesn't turn into drudgery, because that's a possible outcome here. Or, like Danielle was alluding to before, work is the thing that we must always be doing without a break to the point we don't remember if we use shampoo or not. You don't want to get there either. And you can easily get there. Product management really requires that you be good at work-life balance. It's not really an optional, I'll get better at that someday type thing. No, you're going to burn out fast if you can't take a break from it all. And yet this is the very type of work, this work of solving problems that matter and all the people wrangling involved that can very much consume you and put you on that path. In fact, I was reading something about burnout the other day that basically product management is like the perfect storm of things together to enable burnout. So like possibly one of the highest, easiest to burn out from careers out there. So you really do need to think about these things. So in closing, I mean, take good care of yourself, take time for yourself, find other product people who you connect with to talk about these things, and let us know your thoughts.
So drop us a line at hello@productlyspeaking.com or join the chat on Matrix at #productlyspeaking:@matrix.org. Also follow our page on LinkedIn to get the latest updates. We'd love to hear from you.
This has been Productly Speaking.
Thank you for tuning in. If you like what you heard, subscribe. Make sure you don't miss any episodes.
Also, share our podcast with your friends and anyone you think might enjoy listening to an American and a Brit natter on about product management.
I don't think you can call it nattering.
I guess actually we did stay on topic and it's not technically nattering.
Exactly. Well, what did you guys think? Leave us some feedback. Make sure to visit us at www.productlyspeaking.com. Send us an email at hello@productlyspeaking.com or join the chat on Matrix at #productlyspeaking:@matrix.org. Thank you all again, and until next time, cheerio.